There comes a time in a man's life when difficult decisions must be made. For example, should one fight or give up? I believe that nothing could make my wife act the way she did. I had been married to her for 25 years, and we had 3 children. Macy, our youngest daughter, is my little girl, and she's 18. Mike is 20 and serves in the Navy. Jason, our eldest son, is 24, married, and he and his wife have given me 3 grandchildren. I didn't work so hard for so many years, providing for my family, just to walk away with nothing. It wasn't simply about her betrayal, it was about how she did it. After 27 years together, I think she got bored and decided to spice up her life. I'm absolutely certain she thought I was oblivious, a fool who would never suspect she was capable of cheating. I understood her feelings, she was convinced I would never hurt her. Maybe I was just a lovesick fool, or maybe I put my trust in the wrong person. My name is Wallace Banks, and my wife is Marion. We're both 45 years old. Some might call us a middle-aged couple, but I don't see it that way. I run 3 miles a day, eat well, and love my family. Isn't that what a man is supposed to do, take care of his family? Marion had been my pillar of support throughout our 25 years of marriage, and she laid its foundation during the couple of years we dated before getting married. Marion was always the one who held our family together. She was there for every wedding, hospital visit, and funeral. And after all the challenges and hardships we faced, she remained steadfast, like a rock. So why am I sitting here alone in our family home, waiting for the children to come back? Well, here's why. Over the past year, Marion had become somewhat distant. She didn't leave the house as often as she used to, and she seemed to be lost in deep thought most of the time. Whenever I asked her what was wrong, she would simply brush it off or say, "Nothing serious." In the last 3 months, I couldn't ignore her behavior anymore, and I kept reminding her that we were husband and wife. We had always stood by each other, and nothing would ever change that. Then, for the first time in a long while, she smiled. It melted my heart, lifting the heavy weight of uncertainty, and I started to believe that everything would be fine. Marion asked me to sit down and not say anything until she finished. I nodded willingly and sat down. For the next hour, Marion talked to me about her feelings. Much of what I heard was new to me, but I didn't interrupt her even once. She felt stuck in a rut and was losing her sense of self in the marriage. She needed time to rediscover herself. She wanted to live on her own for a while to, as she put it, find herself. Marion explained that she had been feeling out of place for the last few years. Now that our youngest daughter, Macy, was going off to college, it was time for her to live her own life. Finally, Marion told me that she had already found a suitable apartment and would be moving out the day after Macy left for school. I don't remember the moment when Marion finished her long-winded speech and left the room. It was as if I blacked out, and I found myself in a kind of numb stupor. The next thing I recall is Macy leaning over me, gently shaking my shoulder, asking with concern what had happened. It was 2 a.m., and she had just returned from a date. When I looked up at her, Macy gave me a long, knowing look and asked, "Mom told you, didn't she?" I asked her when she found out. Macy replied that Marion had told all of them about her plans to leave about 3 months ago. That I stared at my daughter in disbelief and asked why she hadn't told me earlier, knowing what her mother was planning. She looked away and muttered that Marion had made her promise not to say a word. At that moment, I felt not only that my wife had shattered my trust, but that my children had betrayed me too. They all knew, yet not a single one of them said anything. Much later, I found out they were hiding something else from me as well. But I had a feeling that sooner or later, all of this mess would come to light. Later, I learned that Marion had been having an affair for 3 years, with a younger man named James, who was 33. According to her, my wife at the time felt it was something she had to experience. I didn't have to think about it for long. I decided that neither Marion nor the marriage was worth fighting for. If she wanted a divorce and to leave, I'd let her, but not without a price. The price for Marion would be the house and my pension. She wants to leave. Fine, so be it, but I'm not giving her the house I paid for, just because she wants to move on with her life. I also refuse to pay for her betrayal. So, you sneak around behind my back, decide to leave, and I'm supposed to pay you for all the years you've been lying to me? Not a chance. That's never going to happen. And just like that, with the stroke of a pen, a 25-year marriage came to an end. She left, taking everything that belonged to her or anything I allowed her to have. On that final day in court, I wished her well, walked out of the courtroom, and moved on with my life. It took 7 long years before I saw Marion again. The first thing I did after gaining my freedom was to go deep-sea fishing. It turned out to be one of the best decisions I'd ever made. The solitary, peaceful time spent among the softly whispering blue waves and the playful cries of seagulls. I enjoyed it so much that I sold my old house on land and used the money to buy a new one, on the water. At the same time, I filed the paperwork for my pension, cashed out my account, and planned my next steps. I had $450,000 in the bank, and with the current interest rate, I would be receiving $2,500 a month, for the rest of my life. For my new mobile home, I bought a fantastic 7-meter cabin cruiser that I planned to sail the seas, riding the waves until my last breath or, at least, until I met some long-haired mermaid somewhere. A man can dream, can't he? As they say, the call of the sea was exactly what I needed. Life moves pretty fast, and it's been almost 7 years now that I've been a free sailor, weathered by every wind. I was relaxing, having just finished another 3-month cruise, when I suddenly got a call from Macy. She started asking how I was doing and where I'd been. I asked her what was going on and why she needed me, because her tone sounded like she was fishing for information. Then Macy shocked me by telling me that Marion needed my help. In response, I asked my daughter why her mother, who had been off the radar for so long, suddenly needed me and my help. Ding dong number 2, Macy asked if I knew that her mother had given birth to a little girl. I replied that I didn't. When Macy then wanted to know if I would sit down and talk to her mother, I firmly said no again. That's when my daughter, with anger and frustration in her voice, snapped, asking how I could be so heartless. In response, I asked her how she would describe family members who knew for 2 months that their mother was going to leave their father but never said a word about the betrayal. Then I hung up. The phone kept ringing for the next 10 minutes. Eventually, I'd had enough and turned it off. The next morning, I changed my number and started planning my next cruise. This time, my small but wonderfully cozy, especially without any crazy women, boat would head toward St. Thomas and then set sail for Bermuda. And after that, well, I'd figure out a new destination for the journey. The day I was about to cast off, my 2 sons appeared on the dock. Mike and Jason looked like they were afraid to speak first, so I invited them on board and offered them a beer. Jason was the first to speak. "Dad, we know we were wrong not to tell you about what Mom was planning, but, honestly, we didn't think you'd take it so hard for so long. I mean, you were always at work anyway," he mumbled. Then Mike chimed in, sharing his profound thoughts. "Mom was lonely and, well, she made a mistake. Now she needs your help, and you're turning your back on her." I just sat there, silently looking at them. Jason cleared his throat, glanced at his brother, and asked, "So, are you going to say anything?" I wanted to make sure they understood my perspective before I set sail. "Guys, I don't get it. Your mother cheated on me, then left. We've been divorced for years, and now she's had a child with another man. Am I missing anything?" They nodded, albeit reluctantly. "So what does any of this have to do with me? If you recall, I'm the guy you helped keep in the dark at first, and then completely blindsided. All 3 of you knew what your mother was planning, and you didn't say a word. Now she has problems, but somehow, I'm the bad guy. And honestly, I'm surprised you found me, considering I haven't seen or heard from any of you in 7 years. Although, I did catch a picture of the 3 of you with your mom and her new husband in the paper once. It looked like you were celebrating the opening of a new hospital wing, if I remember correctly. You all were shining bright, like brand new dollars, and they called you, let me think, yes, the happiest family in town. So, once again, why are you here? They both sat there, looking pretty sour and unsure of what to say. Jason finally gathered his courage, cleared his throat again, and said, Dad, you see. Karen needs a kidney, and Mom wants you to get tested for a match. I asked, excuse me? Why would I get tested for a child that has nothing to do with me? Let me repeat my question, why are you here? Then Jason and Mike completed their betrayal of me. Dad, the thing is, Karen is your daughter. Mom was pregnant before she left you. To say I was stunned by this news would be an understatement. How old is the child? I asked, once my eyebrows returned to their usual position. She's 7, Jason replied. And when did you find out about this? I asked. The brothers exchanged glances again, and this time Mike admitted Mom told us at the same time she told us about her plans to divorce. I couldn't believe that my boys had grown up to be such spineless fools. I had always taught them to do the right thing, and they turned out to be such a disappointment. Realizing there was nothing left to say, and no point in continuing the conversation, I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Holding it wide, I nodded toward the exit and gave them a meaningful look until they understood. Rising from the bench, they both hurried onto the dock and were gone within a minute. I was making my final preparations before setting sail when Marian herself appeared on the dock. I had already weighed anchor and was pulling away from the pier when she quickened her pace, rushed to the edge, and jumped aboard. The boat had drifted about 2 meters from the dock when I cut the engines. I was just about ready to throw her overboard when suddenly a little girl appeared on the pier, calling for her mom. That I yelled at Marian to get the hell off my boat. In response, she quickly pulled out a pair of handcuffs, as if by magic, and hastily cuffed herself to the deck cleat, sitting down beside it. Wallace, I know you hate me right now, but Marian gestured toward the girl on the pier, her voice pleading, she needs your help. Karen will die without a kidney. Please, don't punish her for what I did. I know you're angry, Wallace, but I also know you're better than this. I looked at Marian and said, no. I'm not the kind, forgiving person you used to know anymore. Inside, I'm dead, and that's because of you. So, no, I'm not going to help you or her. Damn it, I never even knew she existed, and as far as I can tell, you never planned to tell me. So, to me, you and our sorry excuse for a family are dead. While she sat there, hunched over, rattling her chains and whining at the gangway, I pulled my axe from its case and approached her. I was just about to chop through the spot where she had chained herself when a thought struck me. This could be my second chance to fix what had gone wrong the first time. Marian, I've changed my mind, I said. I'll help Karen, as much as I can. But it's going to cost you. Marian was so happy that I agreed to help Karen that she immediately blurted out, I'll do anything. I docked the boat again, and Jason came with a key to unlock his mother, who was now excited with joy. Afterward, I immediately called my lawyer to explain my plan, which he was to put into proper written form. The next day, we arrived at the hospital, my lawyer and I. When Marian saw my representative, she started to look a bit concerned. The doctor took a blood sample, left for a while, and then returned with a positive match. So, I could donate my kidney. Marian was thrilled, until my lawyer announced my conditions to her and my older children, who were also present. In order to save Karen, they had to officially relinquish their parental rights to her. Marian, all the years we were married, I was the one always making sacrifices. Neither you nor the kids ever gave anything up, it was always me. When you wanted a new car, I traded mine in and got you the one you liked. When the kids wanted something or to go somewhere, I was the one who was left out. I missed their childhoods because I was working like a mule to give them the best, and what did I get in return? Betrayal, From all of you, I said, gesturing toward my former family, huddled against the opposite wall. And now, Marion, you need my help. Well, it's your turn to sacrifice something. If you love her, let the girl go, or you can take your chances waiting for another donor. I hadn't even finished when Marion screamed, I will never give up my child. My lawyer and I stood up and, without saying a word, headed for the exit. Jason and Mike jumped up, trying to physically stop me. My lawyer warned them in a steely tone that if they so much as laid a finger on me, they'd be spending the next 10 years in prison. The boys hesitated for a moment, but then Macy jumped in, shouting, how will you sleep at night knowing you're killing our little sister? I stopped, looked her in the eye, and asked, and how do you sleep at night, knowing you threw your father away? No guilt. Well, I'll sleep just like that. What happened at the hospital was the beginning of World War III. Over the next few days, they almost hit me with a court order to prevent me from leaving the country. But I started my engine just in time and pulled away from the pier, drifting about 100 meters out, calmly floating on the waves, ignoring the shouting and waving from the dock. A while later, when the bailiff came back on a speedboat, I revved my own engine, and took off. They would have had to chase me along the coast for about 400 miles before I'd even think about raising the sails. The official gave up when we crossed into international waters. Eventually, I stopped about 10 kilometers offshore. Once I was within cell range, I called my lawyer to get the latest updates from land. He told me Karen's condition was getting worse and that Marion wanted to talk. I asked him to set up a video conference. During the call, Marion started by pleading with me again not to go through with what I'd said. I laughed and replied, this is exactly what you did to me. The three of you conspired and threw me away. So, Marion, if you won't accept my terms, all I have left to say is, goodbye. In the end, Marion had no choice but to agree to my demands. On the day I showed up at the hospital, I arrived with representatives from Child Protective Services. Just in case, I had also hired 2 retired police officers to ensure everything went smoothly. No one, except me, was allowed to take Karen out of that hospital. The kidney transplant surgery went well. On the 3rd day of our stay, Marion entered my hospital room accompanied by a man. He introduced himself as James Paxton, her current husband. The very lover she had left me for extended his hand for a greeting, but I ignored that friendly nonsense and got straight to the point, asking what this pair wanted from me now. It turned out they were there to tug at my heartstrings again and appeal to my sense of compassion. The only problem was that I didn't have either anymore. Marion and the kids had successfully severed them. So, her husband changed tactics and offered me money. This was getting ridiculously amusing. They somehow thought they could buy me off. Naturally, they were in for another disappointment. On December 4, 2007, Karen and I were discharged from the hospital. Child Protective Services filed charges against Marion for interfering with the guardianship process. Her court hearing was scheduled to take place in 3 weeks. During our discharge, my security guards escorted us, their hands on their gun holsters in case anything unexpected happened. Karen and I were put into a car and taken straight to my boat. One of the guards boarded first to make sure there was no one else inside. Despite all the precautions, my gut told me something was off, so as soon as we got the all clear, we set sail immediately. As we sailed away from the shore, Karen cried for the first 2 hours, until I called her below deck and opened her cabin. Inside, she found every type of Barbie and Bratz doll imaginable, plus the latest and coolest iPod. A little later, Karen asked me to hold on to her phone. She shared a secret with me. Her mother had told her that she would be able to find Karen if the phone was kept on the top deck. I carefully examined Karen's phone after she ran off to play with her new, fancy dolls. Sure enough, there was some sneaky tracking software installed on it. This kind of trick was to be expected. Clearly, that's what my gut had been warning me about. So, they want to know where we are. Well, I'll help them with that. I placed the phone in a waterproof Ziploc bag, attached it to a life jacket, and tossed the whole thing overboard. Their little spy device would float off on its own mission, while Karen and I think we'll head toward the coast of Turkey, or Greece, who knows where the wind will take us. After some wandering, we eventually ended up in Ireland, where we settled down. Karen and I had a slow start getting to know each other, but now things are great. It's been about 10 years, and Karen is ready for college. She wants to attend Duke University. Recently, Karen wrote to her mom, letting her know she was planning to come to the US for school. My daughter has grown into a caring and thoughtful young woman. I've already paid for her tuition, so she's ready to take on the world. I'm a proud father, and I love it. As for me, I'll keep it short. During our years in Ireland, I met a wonderful red-haired woman with emerald eyes named Tilia. We love and appreciate each other, and life is simply wonderful. And now, a bit of news from the States. Jason learned a bit more about betrayal when his mom, Marion, and his wife went on a fun trip to Vegas. Jason's wife came back with no money, but she was 100% pregnant. That truth came to light a little later. When the baby was born, the child looked remarkably Mexican. So much for what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Liars, all of them. Marion didn't sit idle either. After leaving James Paxton, she rather strategically moved in with his brother. Yep, Marion's always been practical. Well, as the saying goes, there's no accounting for taste. Macy was dumped the night before her wedding. It turned out her fiancé was secretly gay and just hadn't wanted to admit it until his father passed away. Mike, well, he's doing great, I think. He's one of those guys who scrapes gum off walls and subway platforms. You've probably seen those hard-working geniuses in the big cities. As for me, I won't lie, I'm glad life gave me a second chance.
Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.